We have entered, as we have said, Lughnasadh as of yesterday. The actual midpoint of the sun reaching 15 degrees of Leo, as we are in Leo season, will be on August 7th. So we are in the height of summer, of course. And this is one of the oldest turning points of the year, this first harvest season. So for our ancestors, of course, this was a celebration of abundance. And it was also a moment of some good Virgo discernment as they separated the wheat from the chaff in the grain as it was coming to its abundant harvest. So the fields have reached their fullness. The months of careful tending and weeding, watering and waiting have finally borne the fruit and ripened grain for us to harvest. But with that abundance comes this equally important question, which is, what are we going to gather? What seeds are we going to save in order to have that harvest again and again in the years to come? And perhaps, more importantly, what are we ready to leave behind? Every harvest is an act of selection. The strongest grain is carefully preserved, not merely to feed the village today, but to become next year's seed as well. Our ancestors understood something that we often forget, that the harvest is never just the end of a preparation. The harvest signals the beginning of the next preparation, the next season of preparing for the years to come. Now, if you've spent any time with me over the last year, you know that I love weaving together how mythology and the stars and astrology and all of the changing seasons are telling the different stories, yet they are all the same story with different characters and different archetypes. And from all different corners of the world, we've reached this universal truth as a oneness, a one consciousness together. So this year, the story that's woven together is feeling especially resonant as the sun stands in the center of Leo. Leo is the sign of vitality and creativity, the sign of the proud lion, right? The courage and expressing ourselves fully and unapologetically, shining bright. The sun reminds us that we stand at the center of our own universe, our own reality. But when Leo operates in its healthiest expression, it can confidently say, yes, I am at the center of the universe, and so are you. It can see that centering, that recognition in another soul, and can celebrate that as much as it celebrates itself. Because like the sun, Leos are born to shine, to expose, to illuminate, and to breathe life and awareness into what deserves to be recognized. It is the season that asks us, invites us to have the courage to step bravely into the light, because our soul's gifts were never meant to remain hidden. And this year, almost exactly at the midpoint of the sun's journey at 15 degrees on August 7th, something also fortuitous is happening. The sun will form an exact trine with Saturn at 14 degrees of Aries. And at first glance, these two archetypes seem very opposite. After all, the sun rules Leo and Saturn rules its opposite sign of Aquarius. The sun creates and brings life, but Saturn lasts and endures. The sun asks, who wants to shine? What wants to be recognized? And Saturn quietly responds with, what deserves to last? This is why the sun sign of Leo stands opposing the sign of Aquarius. This opposition is the challenge for us to integrate two of these energies into our consciousness. And curiously, when we examine Greek mythology, we actually never find some great battle between Kronos, who the Romans would later call Saturn, and a deity that embodies the sun. There's no big war between Kronos and Helios. No famous contest between Saturn and Apollo. Instead, what the myths tell us is something a little quieter. Helios simply continues his journey throughout the sky, because the kings and the Olympians and the gods and the titans, they rise and they fall and they battle and they duke it out together. Empires come and go, yet every morning, Helios, the sun, continues to rise. Every evening, Helios, the sun, continues to set. And it reminds us that beneath every political victory and every personal ambition or journey, every season of our lives, there is something that still exists that is older and steadier. The sun represents that rhythm of the cyclical nature of existence itself. And the Greeks eventually began connecting Chronos with the notion of time itself. If the sun is the force that ripens the grain, time is the force that decides when the grain is ready. The harvest arrives because enough faithful days of caretaking our plants, our earth, have quietly accumulated behind it. Every sunrise, every choice that we make to rise again, to be recognized, every small act repeated over and over until something mundane can become extraordinary, something that we're grateful for. Now, across the Mediterranean, another civilization was watching the heavens with an equal amount of devotion. In Egypt, this is about the marking of the new year. We're coming upon the time that the star Sirius would begin rising in the sky, because it had nearly disappeared for 70 days. But brilliant Sirius would come up, which the Egyptians called Sabbat, and later they associated with a goddess Isis, who would rise just before the dawn. And what this signified is that the waters of the Nile were going to rise, and it was going to flood the terrain, thus bringing that first harvest. And its appearance announced that flooding. And this is what stands the test of time as the beginning of the new year in Egyptian astrology. So to us, maybe a flood would sound destructive, but to the Egyptians, it meant life. These waters were the signal that there would be a harvest, because without them, there was no Egypt. There was no civilization and no future. So while one culture, Greece, celebrates the grain being cut in the earth, another in Egypt celebrates the river returning. And there we have this duality of the water and the earth, the masculine, the feminine, these two ends of the same sacred cycle bringing abundance. And I believe that this year, because we have such a prominent amount of energy in both a Saturn-ruled sign, that of reality, that of the tangible, the real, maybe it's the earth, maybe it's the notion of time itself that lasts and endures. And on the flip side, we have so much energy in the sign of Leo right now, with Jupiter, with the sun at its midpoint, and with the nodal axis just having moved into these places. Therefore, this axis is so loud for the next several years. We're at the threshold of this larger story of integrating this sun and Saturn energy together as a collective. We've entered the eclipse season. We're here now. And the solar eclipse in Leo is coming on August 12th. Eclipses have always marked turning points. And I call these seasons the time of the fated corridor, because I believe as we walk down this corridor or path, any possible doorway we take, any choice we make, leads us on the next big journey in our lives, however small of a start we might have. It weaves together, this choice weaves together the fates of our story. Now, is it permanent and you're stuck there forever? Not necessarily. Not in the sense that you can't change later on, but the choices made within this hallowed ground of the eclipse season will absolutely have lasting consequences. Eclipses are moments when the expected light in the sky disappears, is shrouded from view. Therefore, something that was hiding in the dark may be recognized. The lunar nodes themselves, as I mentioned, have shifted into the signs of Leo and Aquarius, inviting all of us to do this collective rebalancing of that Saturn and Sun energy. And this will last until March of 2028. So Leo reminds us, the sun reminds us to create from the heart, to bring life, to shine, to recognize ourselves and others for their gifts. And Aquarius, the Saturn-ruled signs, reminds us that our gifts ultimately belong in service to something larger than ourselves, something that will last into the future. And neither is complete without the other. We're not being asked to choose between individual purpose and a community. We're being asked to remember that both of these archetypes hold truth and meaning, and to how to integrate them into our psyche. So I believe this Lammas is asking a different question than years before. What are you faithfully becoming? What are you showing up for time and time again? What have you practiced quietly while no one was watching? And what dreams are you holding that have survived more than just the initial excitement? What relationships have you deepened through consistently showing up? What craft has become stronger because you continue to return again and again? And what harvest are you preparing for in the future? What commitment are you holding yourself to in this moment that could allow you to shine for those years to come? Does your wish, your desire, or your dream last beyond the need for external validation? Saturn requires us to be content with that recognition within ourselves, because that is how the journey, the pursuit, the dream is going to last. He challenges us to look beyond an overnight success and instead to strive towards an enduring character, not for the sake of suffering, but to create something that will truly serve a much greater purpose than ourselves. So as we gather tonight, surrounded in the abundance of summer, I hope that you will take the time, especially as we consider our dreams and wishes in the future, to imagine yourself standing in your own inner field of abundance and notice everything within yourself that has grown and celebrate it, recognize it, and honor it. Don't forget to recognize harvest that nobody else can see. And maybe that looks like boundaries you finally held for yourself this year, or grief that you finally faced. Recognize the courage you discovered this year within yourself, or the habits that you're proud to have cultivated. And ask yourself one final question. If only a handful of these seeds can be carried into next year, which ones am I going to choose? Because the harvest feeds us today, and the seeds we choose tonight will shape the world we awaken to in the future. And so with that, may you manifest a life full of divine purpose and glory, for you are so worthy of living that life. And remember that you are always free to keep creating that life. Blessed Lammas to you all.